What's up, everybody? Well, I want to get down to the unboxing, which hopefully will be shorter and could be the one and only unboxing in the month of December. We don't know, but I probably will not be getting too many opportunities because I really just hate the way I'm treated. Like I have to be my parent's shadow, whether I'm with my dad or my mom. And it's just, my mom almost threatened to exclude me from this church event, but luckily I said I'm gonna go if I have to bring a towel and a trash can in the car just in case. So luckily I didn't need it. But anyway, um, so you know, during the time that I was with my mom, I ordered some stuff and had it sent here. Couldn't resist those deals. Black Friday. Um, One of them is, I don't know if I've talked about this before, but this Timmy Martin on Lassie, which was before my time. So he was like a little boy on Lassie. And I had one that didn't have arms and legs that I'd bought in like 2017. And I was able to put his head on a skipper body and I stabbed my hand, in the process, and it'll never be the same. Well, what made him special, as I've stated before, is he's a rare exception to the fact that there are very few dolls around 8 to 9 inches in height, which is about 4 feet something. Very few dolls fall in the middle childhood, as I call it, range of height, meaning the height of a child, 6 through 12, roughly. Middle childhood is the 7 years leading up to the 13th birthday, regardless of what stage of puberty they're in. You know what I'm saying? And I guess they're called grade schoolers, and then later on tweens or preteens when they're at least 10 to 12. So there are just so few dolls. As I've stated before, it's like they're a toddler or a teen, not much in between. They're either small enough for a car seat or big enough for the driver's seat. Not much middle ground. Not many dolls that are like too big for a car seat yet too young to drive. So Timmy on Lassie. Yeah, that's what it is. Lassie in the 70s or something like that. It's almost like they used to make good stuff, but then gradually they just stopped. They used to make a lot of things, that fit my description in the past, which is why vintage is pretty much the only way to get good things like this. Um, you know, Realistic looking boys, um, roughly between 6 or 12 years old or so. Um, they used to make, it's probably what happened was, when dolls first came out, they had more stuff like that. Like there was a Ricky doll, the counterpart of Skipper, and there were more things that would have pleased me greatly, like in the 60s, the 70s, and even the 80s and early 90s. But what probably happened, if I had to guess, well, number one, they didn't sell. Unfortunately, there's just not really much of a market, as I stated before, for male dolls that look like they would sing soprano or treble. And so because there's not much of a market, that's their excuse for not making it in the first place. Second of all, people probably, if anything, had a problem with it or didn't like it, but couldn't expressly say why it disturbed them. To see a doll of a prepubescent or pre-adolescent male, they couldn't put their finger on exactly what they didn't like about it or why they don't want it to be available. So somehow or another, they just changed the doll market to where stuff like that just didn't get made. But nevertheless, I like Timmy a lot. Still going to keep the other one, but this is what he was originally going to look like. And if they hadn't given me the low offer, I probably wouldn't have bought him. But this is him in his original condition, sans Lassie. And, it's an old doll, probably 50 years old. And so he's like Skipper size. And so that's what makes him special. He's like a boy about 4 feet tall. In the 1/6 scale doll world, which is so rare, it's just so uncommon. And there was a period of time when it literally didn't exist. Yeah, you couldn't even find girl dolls that met that description. So anyway, that's what I bought that day. Then the next thing was some more fairies, more of these Greenbrier fairies, like Skylar, you know, the one that I made into a boy because she lost her hair. Well, that's what she used to originally look like, this purple fairy. And then there was a pink one. I had a red one, but said, oh, I'd love to have a pink. Okay, so now I have another purple, I guess, I don't know what I'll color, lila or for lilac, and rose for pink. I don't know. So now I have pink and purple. Though I put the brunette in the purple dress when the other one lost her hair, and I made her Skylar. So the next thing, let's see, I'm trying to think what order did these things even happen. I don't know, because you see, I was over there, and that's another thing was giving me anxiety, was not knowing, you know, just how lazy my dad would be with the checking of the mail. I'm trying to find, let's see, what did I do with it? Oh, got some socks, sailor socks. These Popeye, I'm not really into Popeye, but the anchor thing, just couldn't resist. This was from Target. Now, I don't normally shop Target, but they kept blowing up my phone or my email with last day for this deal, last day for this deal. I've wanted this for years. It's, you know, one of those, I have a lot of those baby dolls like this. You know, the few things I bought at Target were little $3 at the time babies. And they were a lot simpler. They didn't have a bunch of accessories. They were more stripped down. They had the blonde, the brunette, the black, you know, the Hispanic or Latino and all that. And you could make them a boy or a girl because all they had was a diaper. Well, this one, I always wanted her. You know, she had a built-in bow and a shirt in addition to her diaper. And she had more accessories. But at the time, she was going for a lot more than the more stripped down plain Jane babies that I did buy. So many years ago, like 2018 or 19, is it? I bought that at Target with cash so that my dad wouldn't know I was shopping Target. Well, for many years, there's been this Target gift card that I'd put on my account, $10 gift card that my daddy refused to use because both my parents have a vendetta against Target. You know, that's how my parents are. You know, people do one thing they don't like, and, you know, they're on the S list, if you know what I mean. You can't shop there no matter what you need. So, well, back when we had a Target, he was hiding this $10 gift card for years. And it's like, gee, thanks, Dad. You could have just given that to me. But, you know, obviously they didn't want me shopping at Target. And it's something somebody had given him for his birthday. And luckily, you know, the website still allowed me to put that $10 credit on my account. And so it just sat there for years, $10 that I could use but never had the opportunity. Well, finally, I decided on this and blew it and a few more dollars on this baby. And I was surprised that she was still there. You know, if I never shop Target online again, that's fine, but just had to have that baby that I'd wanted for years. Was so glad she was still there, and she had that bow built into her head like Lil instead of Phil. And so that's another thing. But yeah, it's like all these websites, you know, that's another thing. So I had like all these racing thoughts, you know, thinking about vomit all the time, you know, thinking of anxiety about the church bathroom and not being adequate for whatever reason. You know, my mom just, it's like she doesn't, both of my parents, it's like they don't really care what I want. They make it clear that they do not care what I want in life. I am their child when I'm under their roof, no matter my age, and whatever they want is the way things are going to be. Whatever my mom wants to fix is what I have to eat or starve. And if she's just fixing things, it kind of lacks me too much, you know, to be blunt. And so, you know, so that all that anxiety, you know, about the bathroom, about all these deals bombarding me, and, you know, wanting to order these things yet not knowing what my dad was doing on this end. You know, maybe he wouldn't check the mailbox, maybe he would be very angry, you know, that I was buying so much, but then I'd have to call him and explain to him what was going on with the deals. So Temu sent me, you know, this is, let's see, which one, I'm not sure which one's the tablecloth and which one's the bed linen, but this was Temu. I intend to put whichever one is the bed linen on my bed for Christmas, and this is another backup tablecloth. So the other thing, I only bought 3 things on Temu, and really we shouldn't have bought those. I bought another little boy doll like this since I put the other one in the Pugsley Adams outfit. I was going to put this one in the one that he had originally been in until something else happened. I got another deal on a group of 4 dolls, and that's what I probably want to end with. There was a group of 4 dolls. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I was given a low offer. 2 kid cores and 2 Stacy, and one of them's Whitney with red hair, and she was a bowling girl. And oh God, they were in horrible condition. Horrible. Didn't have their accessories. The clothes were just old and gross looking. Looked like they'd been played with for years by gross kids. This one's hair looked like it had some kind of mildew, like it had gotten wet and mildewed, and had to remove it, and that's what I want to talk about. I've always wanted to see Stacy converted into a Todd-like boy. My lifelong dream has been to have a brunette, a blonde and a brunette version of Todd, you know, a Mattel boy like this, in blonde and brunette being Todd, the one they made. And I feel like the late 90s would have been a much better time had there been another little boy or another Todd, perhaps with longer hair, perhaps with molded hair, I don't care. But the fact that they discontinued Todd and they just started to get away from making male dolls other than Ken and Tommy. You know, like I say, toddler or teen, not much in between. And I'm naming him Zach because one of the male dolls that they had considered making was like a boyfriend of Skipper that was the size of Ken named Zach, and they were going to have yo-yos. Well, the girls had yo-yos, but they didn't make the boy doll ever. He was just a concept that they decided not to make because they felt like, you know, they were having a hard enough time selling Ken, so they may as well just scrap Zach. And let's face it, he was basically just a Ken doll with a different face, now that Skipper was the size of a Barbie. So I'm naming him Zach, you know, because I've just always longed to have, you know, I feel like the 90s would have been better. You know, part of the reason I was just so depressed, in addition to everything else going on in my life, was that I went to the store and saw that Todd had been dropped from the Stacy line. And although, you know, I was no longer being allowed to buy and collect dolls in my teens, it just would have made me a lot happier if, you know, like the Camping Fun Stacy, which I have over here. You see, this was around the time. See, that's a Camping Fun Stacy that I bought later, and Whitney with brown hair. What happened was, you see, as time went on, they decided to, you know, start making the girls more tomboyish. This is how things went. Girls became more tomboyish. You know, it became no longer like girls can do things with boys together. It became more like, you know, girls need to not think about boys and do the things boys do with each other. You know what I'm saying? Like going camping, like playing with a yo-yo. I mean, seriously, what girl is into yo-yo like boys are? Like, you know, bicycles and just, you know, just traditionally male activities. You know, they started wanting to have, you know, Barbie be more about, you know, girls doing activities thought of as masculine, but not with boys. You know what I'm saying? Not together, not, you know, just playing soccer to bond with a boy who likes soccer, but, you know, playing soccer for soccer's sake, or, you know, bowling, you know, like this girl was a bowling, you know, she had a bowling ball. It wasn't included. But like sort of getting away from, you know, friendship with boys, you know, having boyfriends, having brothers your size, having, you know, male friends, getting away from that, and more like, you know, the it became the theme became like I can be anything with Barbie. Or I can do anything. I can be anything. That's ridiculous because it's just not true. It's not true for anyone. Male, female, you are what you are. You can't just be anything. There's a limit to what you can be. And um, so they started to, get away from, including boys with the girls, and it became more about like um, excluding them, and instead just having girl dolls only, doing activities that would normally appeal to boys and not girls. And so anyway, um, it really bothered me the late 90s. It's like until Harry Potter came along, Harry and his friends, that was like a brief reincarnation of Todd around 2000 in a different form. And then he was Michael Banks, around 2007, and that was more of a collector's item. And then I don't think, oh, and then there was Max in 2012. So 7-inch, 8-inch boy dolls were just extremely rare. And if it was a celebrity, he was only available around the time of the movie, and then no more versions were made. So yeah, the boy dolls just, they started strongly, discouraging boy dolls from being made in any form. Though, of course, as we all know, I mean, as long as where there are girl dolls, there can be boys. Because, I mean, what really is the difference between a girl doll and a boy doll? I mean, does he have a thing in there? No. So he's just a girl with short hair. And so I've always wished, what I really wish is that, like, I mean, I know they could never have the variation in boys that they had in girls, but I really wish that, like, with Kevin, they could have made it like it was technically still Todd, but he could have just bleached his hair and made it more like DiCaprio, like a Todd with a new hairstyle. Split down the middle, Aaron Carter, Nick Carter, Leonardo DiCaprio look. And, he could have been like Todd with a different hairdo to make him look like a slightly different person. Because, I mean, they could never have the variation that the girls had. Sort of like Whitney, she can be brunette, redhead, or whatnot. But I really wish they would have continued Todd, throughout the 90s, in different, slightly different versions, so that it would be possible to have a diverse collection of Todds. But, he'd technically still have the same name. So like Tommy and, other male dolls, Kevin, Ken, he can have different hair colors. And so, I've always wanted to see Todd in a blonde. That's always been my dream, was to have a blonde Todd and a brunette Todd. And of course there was a black Todd, but that's the black wedding Todd. So yeah, finally get to realize my dream at 42, having a blonde boy version of Todd, but in an unexpected way. These dolls look like they've seen better days. Their joints don't, it feels like they're weird or something stiff. And what happened was, so I probably wouldn't have accepted the offer on these dolls, but what I couldn't resist more than anything is the weirdest thing. It was these pants. He was wearing Ricky shorts, remember? This Pistol Pete or Kyle doll from Kid Core, a rare Kid Core boy. And that's the other thing. Kid Core started making boys in the beginning, around 1990. But then as Kid Core went along, they wanted to be like Mattel. And so when Mattel dropped the boys, guess what? Kid Core did the same. But as you well know, I've always felt, they were cheap enough that I could just remove Katie's hair and make a Kyle, a makeshift Kyle. So this doll, he was wearing the blue shorts from Ricky. And I've always wanted him to have, what should have come. Really, it's supposed to be the other way around. Like, she's supposed to have the blue shorts and he would have the pink shorts, but I don't like that. They're all supposed to be girls, and they just had kind of mix and match soccer outfits. And so this one, it was the weirdest thing. It came with yet another, outfit like this. And oh God, the way they had these dolls dressed, one of them was without a shirt, and that's infuriating because what I was taught was that just because you haven't developed breasts doesn't mean you get to run around without a shirt like a boy would. I don't care how hot it is. So you cover up like as if you have breast, even if you don't. So, and then the other doll that it came with is this doll. So it was like, or no, it was, I already had this kid core. It was like 2 kid cores with horrible hair. I had to like tame it, and I made that cute little accessory, and I made a pearl necklace. They were in this horrible looking outfit. You know, it's got like a flower that's coming off of it. And so temporarily, I decided that this boy can wear it as pants. And I was just debating on, you know, I guess it doesn't really matter who gets what outfit, just so they're fully clothed on these cold nights. Because, I mean, I know even a real person wouldn't get a cold. But I like to have them dressed. You know, to me, you know, I think it's very important to be fully clothed, as you well know. My clothing are my best friends, which is why vomiting and pooping scare the heck out of me like they do. So, you know, temporarily I'm putting this shirt on him to hide the ugliness of this other outfit that came with the girls. So I basically had to launder their clothes. I had to give them a bath. See how ugly that is? It's coming off. But temporarily I just had it on him, you know, while I was doing his hair, and I felt like the stripes, I like the stripes on him because the stripes make him look more broad-chested. Something about, I just love I love stripes and plaids on boys. I feel like it makes them look more broad-chested than the girls by illusion. And that's why I like him for myself. And, you know, it just gives that illusion that his rib cage is just a little bit bigger than hers. And she can't put her arm down. So, you know, my little boy, and I wasn't, like I said, if she had had nicer hair, I'd have kept it. But the fact that it was all mildewed and I had to remove it, it was only mildew like in this part. I said, I gotta remove that. And so I did, and I painted his scalp. I might flock it, you know, with some yellow pipe cleaner fuzz. But there you go, a blonde, closest you can get to a blonde version of Todd. And so, yeah, it's like I feel like my world is more complete, you know, having all these items, and I just really wish, what I really wish is I didn't feel a strong urge to buy them, you know. Oh, and I put her in this mermaid outfit. She was in that ugly peach looking outfit, and I felt like, see, because one of them didn't have a shirt. So once I, you know, decided the pants were for him, that was like that one being naked. And so I decided this would be her outfit instead. You don't need to cover your chest a lot. Like, you don't need to look, this is my rule. They don't need to look like they're going outside in Alaska, but they need to cover their chest, especially a girl in particular. You know, a boy should too, but it's especially important for a girl because, as I stated before, just because you don't have breast development does not mean you get to go run around bare-chested like a boy. My mom would never have allowed it. Even when we were a year old, we had to wear a one-piece bathing suit outside at all times. Last but not least, this just came in yesterday. And 2 of them are these puppets. So what did I do with the other? These puppets that I couldn't resist because they were, that's the Hunchback of Notre Dame and Esmeralda. Let's see, where did I even put the other one? Oh, it's so frustrating. Cannot find it. Where? Oh, yeah. Over here. One of them was a kid core doll. the smaller than Katie doll, and this little Western doll. And she's wearing like real blue jeans. So that'll go nicely with him. I know you didn't have a sister in the movie, but that looks nice. So, you know, I had to launder their clothes, and also had to repair their clothes because like the crotch was coming apart. You know, it looked like some kid just tore up the clothes trying to put them on the dolls by force. And so I had to bathe the dolls, put powder on them to slide smoother into their clothes, redo their hair if possible, remove their hair if it had mildew, and make my dream boy with blonde hair like Todd. And I named him, like I said, Zach, you know, in honor of the yo-yo boy that never got made in the 90s. It was almost like, you know, they just decided in the 90s that, you know, it's hard enough to sell what I've described, Ken and little Tommy. Yeah, it's hard enough to sell them, so we're not even going to bother trying to sell what's even harder to sell. And then, of course, there was, you know, rare celebrity dolls, occasionally like Jonathan Taylor Thomas Pinocchio and Anakin Skywalker around 98. So I guess I should consider that a substitute. So go ahead and post this really long video and say I hope that I'm imagining that my throat is scratchy, or that it's just from talking and screaming about the train and the coal. But yeah, I feel like 2025 has just hit me hard, almost like as a punishment, you know, for bragging about my health and, you know, making fun of people who vomit and so forth. So go ahead and post this video.